We'll bring the Diversion Authority Public Outreach Committee meeting to order. And I'd like to acknowledge who's on the phone, please.
Jake is here.
Hey, Jake.
You have Rocky Schneider.
And Rocky. Could you turn that up just a little bit? All right. That's first item on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting in December. Do we have a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Minnesota DNR permit decision and timelines.
So we just wanted to mention that this is the first meeting since the permit was issued, and you guys are obviously all aware of that. We did post on the website in a formal response. It got a lot of news media, and then the other thing I wanted to mention is that we sent out a newsletter on the same day, and it had almost 50% opens, which is really, really high. And so because it happened during a holiday, I thought maybe we wouldn't have as much interest, but it was there. So that's just kind of the things that we wanted to mention with that.
Question on that. There's been administrative appeals filed. What's the time frame for the DNR to take action on them? I mean, someone asked me last night, okay, is this going to be tied up for years again with the administrative? Does anyone know how long a time frame that takes?
I do not.
Well, I think the DNR can decide whether they want to engage in it. Is that right, Rocky, that the DNR has authority to decide if they're going to entertain it?
Yeah, I can take a crack at that. So there's been a couple filings for a contested case hearing. So far, the DNR hasn't granted a contested case hearing. So there are some procedural steps. It's not guaranteed. It's sort of a two-part process. One, you have to have standing to do it, and another one, you have to have a debate over the facts of the case. And so far that hasn't happened. There's a 30-day window from the granting of the permit for those filings to be made. And so my understanding, I've heard some back and forth about Wolverton and Comstock, both cities, and then Buffalo Red also passed a motion at their last meeting to file, but they have yet to file anything to the best of my knowledge. So we're not really sure what the follow-through is. If they are granted, you're correct, those are sort of lengthy processes. For instance, we're still in the contested case hearing for the last permit. You know, we've sort of purposely stalled that one, but to give you some perspective. But otherwise, we don't really know. There's a debate over what happens if a contested case hearing is granted. Does that hold anything up or not? Our lawyers are telling us that there's nothing in the law that prevents things from moving forward even with that. So I think there's some of that clarity is happening. There's a lot of legal things going on. I know at 2 o'clock today there's actually a meeting with the judge and all parties. And so that's sort of the next step.
So we're involved in that meeting?
Yes, all parties in the lawsuit are involved in that. That's the first time we've been before the federal judge in quite some time.
All right, Mike, does that answer your question?
Doesn't give me a definitive answer, but at least it gives us a status where we're at.
I've heard up to a year.
Yeah, it's, without saying it's frustrating.
All right, item 3, North Dakota legislative update. First test.
You guys,
the state appropriate.
Roger, would you mind taking a different item for a minute? I'm just packing up to go to Bismarck with the crew for the testimony, and I'm just switching luggage right now. And so if you'd give me a couple-minute reprieve, I'd appreciate it.
We can do that.
Thank you so much.
All right, next item, Red River Basin Commission conference recap.
So I was there. We had a booth, the Diversion Authority had a booth, and then Jason Benson spoke at the conference. I was also at the one the year before and the year before that, and the questions, it was kind of interesting. You had some people that obviously followed it, and then a lot of folks from Canada that the last time they heard about it was at the last conference. And so there was a wide range of questions about it, and the number one question was, you know, when are you going to build it? When is it going to be done? And how long is it going to take to finish it, kind of thing. So I think that's a good event, and it's a good outreach event for us. And Jason did a great job of speaking and presenting. So.
I was there to listen to Jason, and he did an excellent job of explaining the project, really hit all the key items, and did not, let's see, did he receive a question that?
He had one, and I don't remember what it was.
I don't either.
But it was way at the end. It was after the other presentations.
But I thought he did a very thorough job of explaining. Item 5 is Chambers Eggs and Issues event. That was about a week ago, is that right?
Yep, and Mayor Mahoney spoke at that, and I think Jason also presented at that as well. And so that is a crowd that obviously is really interested in the project, and I think that was the same question that they wanted to know is, when is it going to be moving forward, and when are you going to build it?
Yeah, I know Mayor Judd also
Oh, yep.
spoke at that as well. I was supposed to be on the panel, but I had to leave town, and I didn't get back in time for it, so. But I understand that Jason once again did a presentation on that, and it was, I think he does a really good job when he gives those presentations.
All right, next item is partnership with MetroCog for recreation planning.
And that's a Rocky question. That one I don't know anything
Yep.
about.
I'm available again. Appreciate that. We're just trying to beat the blizzard out to Bismarck, and so we just hopped in the car together. The MetroCog for recreation planning. You know, this is something that West Fargo and Horace have been interested in at various levels in the past, and MetroCog started making more noise over the last year or two about how come they're not more involved in the project and the different community partners involved in MetroCog. And with the sort of slowdown period and P3 procurement on hold, we decided to engage MetroCog as part of the recreation planning as part of the P3 process. And so this is an item that's going before finance and the board to sort of start allowing MetroCog to issue a study to begin looking at sort of our current scope of work and just seeing if there's any suggested alterations or confirmations of the work we've done already, and really to kind of bring our other community partners into it, and MetroCog being that's their expertise. There is also a hope that, you know, we're starting with sort of phase 1 of the recreation plan, you know, as it first gets implemented. There's some hope out there that future phases maybe could use MetroCog as a vehicle to obtain funding for additional phases of it, which would sort of move from one pot to another, but it would be helpful.
Is the diversion project responsible for recreation costs to this project?
Yes, there's always been a significant recreation component conceived as part of the project because it's a federal project. It's one of the requirements, and there's scope written up in the P3 to sort of put those into place. I think from a public outreach, you know, early on we had the idea. I think April Walker was pushing this frequently. Is, you know, how can we get the public involved in telling us what they want for that recreation? I mean, we got to do something, and we sort of have good ideas, but maybe it'd be a good idea to get some public involvement opportunities to, you know, tell us what they want, what kind of trails they want, or, you know, those type of things. And so I think using MetroCog for that vehicle is the right vehicle for it.
I think that'd be excellent.
So Rocky, this is Rick. So you're saying that this is a responsibility of the Diversion Authority to get this done as part of the overall project. And so does that then indicate that we've got something in the budget, either the P3 budget or somewhere else for the recreation, and how much is that?
That's probably Martin's driving, but I don't think he has that number offhand.
Okay, well,
we can get you that information.
It's going to come up at finance probably, so perhaps, you know, sometime between now and finance, maybe somebody could today get into it and just find out what that, you know, if it's in there and how much that is.
Yep.
Just curious, because I know the question's going to come up.
Yep, no, that's a good question.
It seems to me that early on in this process, when we were talking about recreational components of a plan, that the federal government wouldn't partake in any financial costs associated with recreational plans. And I believe, if I recall correctly, any planning that would be done in that regards was a local responsibility. Rocky, am I correct on that?
Yeah,
That doesn't mean,
yeah, you're on.
it doesn't mean that we have to include them either, but it's, I think the stipulation was that if you did do it, that it would have to be more local funds doing it.
Yeah, that's basically right, yeah.
Well, I think it'd be great to explore the additional funds from the public to expand the recreation benefits here, so, and also to extend our dollars.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we're very focused on sort of making this about flood protection implementation, so it's not about recreation, but if you think about sales tax dollars being paid out till 2084, and, we flood every 5-10 years or whatever the case is, it's nice to have that daily benefit that people see and use. And I think it's a missed opportunity if we don't make the most of it to have this sort of destination almost type recreation that people come to use. If you look at all the greenways along the city that has been done through, flood protection, I think they've been really benefited the whole community. But we need to make sure we can afford it too, so it's not just at any cost. But so we'll get you an answer, Rick. I think we have an answer for that. We'll have it ready at finance.
Thank you.
And Rocky, can you go back then to testimony in the State Appropriations Committee in January, the 10th of January?
Sure. So we're headed out to Bismarck now. We have a hearing tomorrow morning. This will be our second hearing before the Senate Appropriations Committee. We had one on January 10th as well. The one on January 10th, we had about an hour presentation, and maybe I could share the whole presentation with the Outreach Committee if you haven't seen it yet. We presented, and the governor also presented. And so it's sort of a very rare, unique, special opportunity to have the governor testify on behalf of a project. But given his involvement over the last year, we thought that was appropriate. But he had some really neat numbers and about the need for protection and how we compare to other projects and really the return on investment for state dollars. And so I think he gave us a lot of good sort of talking points to use for the future as well. And so I'll share that with everybody. It was effective, but as this project, as you know, is very detailed, and so they called us back for another full committee hearing, which I think we're the only project getting another full committee hearing. So we're planning to talk about finances a little more in depth tomorrow. I'm happy to share that presentation too. We just finalized it as I walked out the door today. So I'll send that around. But mainly it's Martin Nicholson presenting on the finances, but it's also Mary Sherling and Tony Grinberg and Mayor Mahoney, and Jason Benson and John Shockley. They all have speaking roles. So it's pretty in-depth, us before the committee. I would just say that's the funding bill. There are a couple other critical bills for us that maybe it'd be better to send a report out to the Outreach Committee. I've been doing regular reports for the leadership, but instead of running through each of those bills, I think it might be helpful to send a report and then maybe ask for potential contacts from the Outreach Committee to legislators if you'd be willing to do that.
Yeah, I think that'd be good if you get that out to us. I did have a question about Monday. There was a hearing on Quick Take. Any update on that?
Can you say that again? There was a hearing on Monday?
On Monday, wasn't there a hearing on Quick Take?
Oh, yeah. So on Monday and Tuesday, there were two different hearings on sort of critical bills for us. On Monday, 1207 was the bill number. It was one that really gives a lot more guidance to judges in awarding legal fees. As you remember, we had one case where we won the case, we won the appeal, and it was for about $40,000 worth of property. But we were awarded about $100,000 or to pay over $100,000 in legal fees as well. So you can imagine that if we had to do that on every property, now we're having attorneys from out of the state coming in and telling property owners, why not fight it? They're going to pay for your fees regardless. And we had one offer come in just this week asking for $80,000 in attorney's fees and saying that was only half the fees that the property owner actually paid. And so if we're going to end up being responsible for every attorney fees, we're going to be in trouble budget-wise. And so this bill really sort of better outlines that process and allows the judge to award it if we're egregiously wrong. But if we're close, it sort of prevents them from awarding legal fees. So that was a critical one. I think we had a lot of supporters on that from a lot of other water projects around the state. My guess is that one will be just talking to the Judiciary Committee, where Cass County has 5 members on the Judiciary Committee, so it's a good one for us. They probably will modify that one, finding the right numbers, the right sort of levels and tiers for the judges. But any more guidance to the judge is better than not. But the other one that's probably more critical to the diversion project is on Tuesday this week. It was 1184. This is the one that would eliminate all quick take authority for all political subdivisions. So the counties, the cities, water districts, every political subdivision. And so this is a major one for us because we found that if you have to go through regular eminent domain, that means you can't access the property until you go through the entire court case. That can be up to 2-year delay. And so if you think about our P3 contract, for instance, where we need all the land, it could hold up our P3 by 2 years if we were to lose quick take authority. And right now we're sort of arguing that last session was a really good compromise bill that lengthened it out to about a 6-month process that we think still gives good due process to the landowner. And we are sort of asking, give us some time for that bill to, has just went into effect about a little over a year ago. Give us some time to see how that works. A lot of work went into that. We think it's a good process. Let us try that out for a while. And if it needs tweaks, let's tweak it, but don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because it's going to, and so that was a good hearing, I guess. There was about 12 different organizations, League of Cities, Water Resources Districts, State Engineer, the DOT, all opposed that bill. And so, while we think that we'll see what happens, but we're hoping that we can kill that bill. Does that answer your question, Roger?
Yes, it does. Maybe just a quick review on the lands that we have acquired so far and the very limited use of quick take that we've had to use so far.
Yeah,
you have some
very
numbers?
rough guidelines here, but about 200 properties we've acquired to date. We've gone to eminent domain on 5 of them. 4 of them we've been able to settle before the court ruled. So however you want to figure out those percentages, 1 out of 200 the court's actually ruled on before we were able to come to terms. But 2.5% of them we've gone to eminent domain on. So it's a rare thing, but there's people out there that would use that to the fullest advantage to hold up the project.
And I think that's an important demonstration of how we're able to work with landowners and fairly compensate.
It's really important.
Yep.
All right, Rocky, anything else on the testimony?
No, that's really the gist of it. There's a couple sort of loan bills that we're tracking as well and working with, but I'll include that in a legislative update to the committee. So.
All right, thanks, Rocky.
Yep.
90-day outlook and key activities.
So if you look in the back of your packet, it's actually the separate sheet. It's a 3-month outlook plan. It's a draft. It's something that the co-executive directors thought might help the committees and board kind of see what's coming up, see what kind of actions are coming up, what kind of testimonies coming up, and it looks like this. It's this sheet.
Oh, it's that.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
So it's got some of the public meetings that are scheduled, and then, there's a lot of things that happen with legislative session, and as we know, we'll put it on there. But we thought it might be a good tool, so so you can kind of see out a little bit farther. We don't have a tool like that already. So if you have any comments, just let me know, because we're the ones that create that and kind of hold it, so.
Will this
Where-
be online?
There's parts of it that are online already with, with our calendar and our meetings and things like that.
Okay.
Some of the other stuff is not necessarily meant for the general public to see up front and center on the website, I guess. It's all open meeting stuff too that they can see, but yeah.
Are you aware of any legislative forums that are scheduled yet? They get kind of important to go there and listen to the local legislators and their comments, and particularly when we're in the middle of,
Yep.
considering bills and stuff.
Yeah. I haven't heard it. Rocky, do you know of any legislative forums coming up?
I haven't actually heard any dates, but I know a lot of legislators do that on the weekends, especially at crossover time, which is in I think February 20th is crossover. So we'll make sure we try to have representation at those and try to see what people are hearing. But hopefully we got our ear to the track out in Bismarck, so we're hearing things before they comes up at Saturday sessions, but we'll make sure we're attending those where needed.
Yeah, I think that's important. If there's questions that legislator can't answer, and we can, let's make sure we're there.
Roger, I do have a couple of comments on this too, and I know, and I think, Rick, I think you were one through the Finance Committee had asked about letters in terms of going to the North Dakota Legislature on the commitment by Minnesota. And I believe there's been a letter drafted that's going to show our Minnesota entities' intent to go before the legislature. That should be, I don't know, Rocky, if you have that now or not, but I know it's our intention to do that. And having said that, I think it's our intent to, once that letter goes, it's our intent to also be down in St. Paul. I know we have, some of us commissioners are going to be down in St. Paul on some other issues during the legislative process, and our intent is going to be to keep that dialogue going on the, we actually have a letter submitted with an $86 million request. And I believe that's in the hands of those folks right now to show them in Bismarck that we are following through with that, as our joint powers agreement says that we will. And then in addition to that, I have mentioned to Eric, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Rocky yet, but I think it's very important that we get ourselves on the agendas of both the Otter Tail County Commission and the Becker County Commission to give them updates on this project. And, I think we've spent time in the past going to Wilkin and Richland counties talking about this project. We have not done so with Otter Tail or Becker. And one of the critical reasons why I think it's important to do that is because they both appoint to the Buffalo Red Watershed Board. And so I think it's very important that the Otter Tail County Commission and the Becker County Commission understand the importance of this project, not only for us, but to them. And so I intend to work with Eric and Rocky. I've already talked to our board chair, Commissioner Wayland, and if need, they also meet on the same days that we have our county board meetings, and I said that I would be willing to forego our county board meetings and go and help with that presentation to those other boards. I think at this stage that can be a critical component of outreach that we've probably missed out on. And so, Rocky, just be aware that we're going to have some serious dialogue about that to move that forward.
Roger, this is Jake.
Go ahead, Jake.
In conjunction with what was just said, we're a public outreach committee, and I'm just wondering if we shouldn't be reaching out to Buffalo Red board. I know that it's a very difficult issue, but I think we should be doing it on a constant basis. If they continue to say we're not going to be part of it, I still think we should be inviting them over and over again. Roger, we're going to have to start purchasing land, and we need a vehicle to purchase land over on the Minnesota side. We had that discussion yesterday, and so that's a really touchy issue. And so I don't know who can talk to those board members, but I think we should have a concentrated effort to try to bring them back on board.
Jake, this is Kevin, and I would be glad to respond to your concern, and you're right. What we're planning as the Minnesota entities being members on the Diversion Authority are members of the Morehead City Council and the Clay County Commission. The 5 of us have met, and we are looking at forming a separate joint powers entity that deals with land acquisitions in Minnesota. And part of that, now this of course isn't going to do with anything with eminent domain, but it's, we're doing that as a resource to all of our Minnesota landowners who might have a concern about being treated fairly in terms of their offers and appraisals and land acquisitions, just like I believe the Cass County Joint Board has been doing for North Dakota properties. So having said that, we met as entities, and I did propose that we offer to the Buffalo Red that they be part of that joint powers entity in Minnesota for the purpose of land acquisitions. There was a letter that went out to the Buffalo Red board today that was signed by Commissioner Wayland and myself, inviting them to be part of that joint powers group for anywhere from either 1 to 2 members. And that we asked that be placed on the agenda, and we're going to be going there to talk to them. So clearly part of their concerns at the Buffalo Red is how the landowners are going to be treated in their watershed district, and our goal from this process to assure them that they could help be at the table to make sure that those people that they represent are treated fairly. So Jake, I hope that answers your question, but that's currently the current developments that are in place.
Okay, thanks. I think that's a great idea, and also I think that if this committee can do anything to help with that, I think we should be doing it.
Does it make any sense to bring a representative from the Buffalo Red onto the land committee, as we did for Oxbow when?
Well, I certainly think that would be a good idea to propose that to them, that they could come on to that as well. I don't know to what level of involvement they actually want to have with the official diversion authority boards. They were originally offered to be on the diversion authority itself, and they declined to be part of that. So, but it certainly wouldn't hurt to offer that, but I want to make sure that we would have the authority to do that before before we'd go and do it.
I think by continually asking them to be part of this process, and if they keep refusing, I think their refusal becomes public and it doesn't look good for them. So I just think that we need to keep inviting them.
Hey Jake, this is Joe Herbst. Hey everybody, I'm the real estate coordinator. Came up to speak a little bit on land outreach planning, and there's a bit of a tie-in to what Jake is talking about. I think some of the angst that's out in the county comes from the fact that they don't know what's going on. They're going to their representatives at the Buffalo Red Water District looking for answers, and I think maybe what's next year on the agenda may help with that.
Yeah, and if I could follow up to that, and then I was at that last meeting, and it was jam-packed with people from down south and people who oppose this project, and they spent an hour telling the water board about it. And while they were taking a break in an executive session, I had many of those property owners coming up to me saying, you've been promising us this, you've been promising we'd tell us this, and you'd tell us that. And my response to them, it was your organization's efforts that made it so that we could not discuss it with you. We were not able to discuss anything with land acquisitions because of the federal court order. So I made it clear that it was not our fault that why we weren't able to talk. I then told them all, and I told during the watershed meeting that we have completed the phase 1 study, and that has more to do probably with the flowage easements, but it's still part of what their concerns are. And I said that we're much closer in that regard, and I did mention to them that night about this Minnesota JPA group that we're going to be forming that's going to deal with lands. And it's all, that's all looked at as a voice for them. That's kind of the intent of this, is a voice to them to make sure they're being treated fairly. Obviously, that doesn't mean we can just give away the ship either, but it's all about making sure everybody's treated fairly in this process. I don't know, maybe you want to go into more of that with what you're on that number 8. But.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll go to lands outreach planning, number 8.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. I'm sitting in for Rocky on this one today. You guys may know me a little bit. I'm Joe Herbst. I'm the real estate coordinator. I work with Eric and Rocky and Tammy and everyone over at AE2S and all of our land firms. And so I'm pretty involved in the planning and execution of our lands policy. And I'm excited that we're to the point where we can actually go forward with this outreach plan. Land acquisition, really, it goes a lot easier when people are in the know. What I've found is that when folks don't know what's going on, they assume the worst. The rumor mill tends to take over for actual truth and answers, and there are good questions out there that need to be answered. I think that this outreach plan it's a long time coming, and that's for good reason. And that reason I'll talk about just for a second here, but doesn't fully go away. And one of the things that I think should be highlighted in this outreach plan is that there does remain a level of uncertainty over which parcels will be impacted. And so when you have a suggestion, let's send a letter out to everybody that's impacted, the next question then becomes, okay, but what about the people that we don't know, if they're going to be impacted or not? And there have been a couple of cases where we have gone out a little further ahead than where our design and our project development is at, and informed somebody that they weren't impacted, and then they became impacted later. And so this was on Plan B around Horace. And so there's been an apprehension there to send a letter to everybody when we don't know yet. On the other side of that, the risk of not sending a letter is, I think, becoming apparent, where if we're not having those conversations with them, they'll make up their own, and they'll go looking for answers elsewhere, which can cause problems. So I don't know if we want to just go through the handout here.
I think the committee has reviewed it before, right?
Yeah, back in November 7th, I think we,
Okay.
the outreach plan to impact the properties, is that
Yep.
That's
what we're
right.
looking at? Okay. Yeah, we have gone through this.
And so so if everyone's comfortable with it, I guess, are there any questions straight away?
Is there?
Could also just run through kind of the high points for everyone.
Yeah, why don't you-
Okay, so as I mentioned before, there has been that lingering question about, well, who do we send letters to if we don't know exactly where the impact is? And as you are probably aware, one of the permit conditions that the Minnesota DNR put forward was using a PMF, and somebody might have to remind me what that actually stands for, a PMF boundary for the staging area where we need to purchase the property rights. And before it was we were going with 100-year hydrology, and then Plan B had some different hydrology, and then a PMF, which is essentially the worst case scenario, the biblical flood, everything that possibly could get wet when we operate this diversion is included in the PMF boundary for mitigation of not only structures but also the acquisition of property rights. And as I understand that some of those conditions we're seeking clarification on. Are we required to go PMF? Will the North Dakota legislature also allow us to go with the PMF and the State Water Commission? I think the cost would probably go up. So we're in the process of reviewing that. At this point, we are going to contact the people in the upstream mitigation area based on the boundary that we had for Plan B. And that's the most solid information that we have right now. And so in properties to contact, number one would be the diversion footprint. That would be the big channel itself and the 2 aqueducts and a couple of associated infrastructure pieces. We're in contact with, I think, half of those people or more already. And for those that we haven't reached out to, that will happen very soon here as we will begin to resume acquisitions, planned acquisitions, that is, on the channel. And then the footprint of the southern embankment and associated infrastructure. That one, we're just going to go with the design that we have right now and send letters out to those folks. And then again, the big one is the upstream mitigation area. I think that's where a lot of the opposition is and a lot of the questions are. And so we'll use that boundary of the Plan B and get those letters out to people. We do assume that that will start a dialogue. So for the folks that have had a lot of questions that haven't been contacted previously, they will be directed to our website where they can send an email or actually just call us, and then we'll open the dialogue with them at that time. I do assume that we're going to get a few calls once those letters go out, and that's actually a good thing. It's a tough conversation sometimes, but it's one that the earlier you start, the better. So in properties not included, properties already acquired, and then anything needed outside of the footprint that isn't part of essentially what we just went over here at the southern embankment, which is the levee and whatnot, the diversion channel, and then the upstream temporary storage area. So if they're not as part of that, at this point, they may be part of the project, but we're focusing on those 3 geographic areas right now. And one of the complications is, okay, so we understand and we're embracing the uncertainty, and I think that's good. I think that's a good move on behalf of the committee and of the diversion, to just own up to that and let folks know that, yes, things are still under development, but opening that dialogue is huge. And so what ends up happening then is to have, I think what Rocky and Tammy put together here, letters to the property owner. There will be a couple of different ones. Number 1 here talks about a little bit of what's included on the letter, but then there's 2 and 3. And so really what we have is 3 different types of letters to the 3 different geographic areas. And area 3, the upstream area, is the area with the most uncertainty. And so our southern embankment, we get design from the Corps that isn't 100% design. That's one of the challenges of this project, acquiring land when you don't have a 100% design, but we're going to reach out to them anyway. And then the upstream area. And so each letter will have its own I guess, message or flavor. We'll include contact info to have any, to get a hold of us with any questions that they have. And I think that, well, just in general, that this is going to be a good move. This is going to pick things up. This will hopefully allow us to kind of squish what's going on in the rumor mill. And it's challenging when you don't have all the answers, but I think it's also okay to say we don't have all the answers, but here's what we do know.
Any questions for Joe?
No, just a comment. I was just glancing at the website here. This seems like a pretty hot topic or big subject with the people that are out there is land acquisition. Could we provide a better link on our website? You go to the website and it's got mitigating impacts, but it really doesn't, I understand this is a part of that, but it doesn't really say land acquisition. So that someone could just go there and have you've got big buttons down here to hit the DNR site and the Corps of Engineers sites, something like that, so it's a focal point, people can just hit one spot, or consideration of maybe a separate website name. I know like cities of Fargo and West Fargo have like Fargo Streets, West Fargo Streets, that people can go and home in just on that topic, since it's a hot topic item. Just for consideration, so that you don't have to dig through here, and I'm trying to find it, and you're going through 6 things, and you get frustrated.
I think you're right, Mike. I think there's several people out there that want to know about that, but they don't necessarily understand the technical term that we use of mitigation.
Right.
So they want to know, they look at it as, how is this impacting my land? And if we say, well, we have a mitigation plan, they kind of shake their head.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they think mitigation, they say, okay, well, what are you going to give me to use my land? Well, in lots of cases, we're going to have to acquire land, actually purchase the land. So just a suggestion, once you get the plan rolling in full.
Yep. So that actually goes well with the next, maybe 2. We do have the new website that we're working on, getting ready, and I showed a preview last time. Mike, were you here at the last meeting at all?
I think it was.
I
but
can't remember.
I don't recall the presentation.
So we have the new website that kind of, our lands team met to talk exactly about that topic of what do we call it and how do we structure it so that people can find it quickly. The new website is almost ready to go. We had to do a little bit of troubleshooting with speed so that it's a lot faster on a mobile device. And I think once we launch that, I think it'll kind of meet what you're asking for, because, we recognize that needs to be front and center.
And I think in the upstream area, I think a reference to probably the Phase 1 study that was completed for mitigation, and then the ongoing plan maybe for continuing that into a Phase 2 to help understand the impacts to their individual properties, I think could be noted.
And we can send, like for the committee's information, we can send a copy of all 3 letters so that you can read them. So if you do talk to people, you know what the letters said.
That'd be good.
Be nice to know. Yep.
Okay.
Rick?
Quick question, you may have mentioned this, Joel, but timing, when are we going to start sending these letters out? What's the thought process?
Perfect question. And that's always a little bit of a moving target. Tammy, I was thinking probably 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
Sooner the better.
Yep.
Right, okay.
One of the things that we have to be careful of when the Minnesota landowners, because this letter is going to be signed by the entity's chair here and the MCC JPA, as it's described here, which is the Moore Clay County JPA, which I talked about a little bit earlier, that isn't done yet. So we got to make sure that for those landowners that's in place.
Well, that doesn't happen overnight.
No.
So, I mean, are you going to delay the whole letter campaign until?
No, I'm just
for that group?
No, I'm saying for, and maybe there's another way we can send that to them without.
Suggesting there's going to be.
Without,
Minnesota entity.
Yeah,
but I just don't want us saying that there's an entity that
Right.
isn't there.
Okay.
Because then that
Yeah, suggesting perhaps in the letter
Yeah,
that here's
yeah.
contemplated putting this,
Right.
in process, putting this entity together.
Right.
Because I'd like to get the letters out sooner than later,
Oh, yeah,
because
no
we
question.
don't want
I-
to wait, We're never going to get it perfect.
They all want to hear about it.
Yeah, so what's
I,
the idea?
Roger,
Go ahead, Rocky.
I think on the letter, we're ready to send it by the end of the week. And so it's really not an issue with the planning issue. I think part of it is obviously the board has an action item that's critical, the sort of commitment to land acquisition later today. That's a necessary step. There's obviously some other legal things that could affect the timeline, but otherwise we're basically ready to go. And I think Joe's right. It's probably within the next 2 weeks. It's just sort of when is the right time that to pull the trigger based on all these other little things. But I don't think we're waiting for anything else to hold us up, because I think we're getting more and more contacts. We even got one earlier this week from somebody in Stanley Township saying, you told us you were sending us a letter after you got the permit. Well, it's been a month. Where's the letter? So I think we need to get it out. All this other stuff's just going to have to fall into place as it will.
Joe, anything else?
No.
Okay.
Nothing further.
Project funding, outreach, and education.
And I'm not totally sure. Rocky, was that your addition to the agenda? Do you know what that was about? Project
I
funding?
think Eric added that one. I'm going to blame Eric because he's not around.
And we did we
not-
update the committee last time about the updated cost estimate in the presentation. So I think that's probably what that's referring to.
Just one thing that came to me, and it was from Maury Lanning. He was concerned that we did not go over the top of the local representatives. He said Paul Marquardt, Eakin, and any other the local representatives, don't go over the top of them and go right to St. Paul and ask for funding. He said make sure they're involved in some of the initial steps and understand what, yeah, and maybe you have, but Maury had suggested that. fmdiversion.com launch and analytics.
Yeah, so like I said last time, we're working on the new layout of the website. It's not we're not remaking the website, we're updating it. We are doing a little bit of troubleshooting and making sure that everything was set to go before we actually pull the trigger, so look for that pretty soon. Analytics, the report is in your packet. You'll see that the day that the cost estimate was released and the day that the permit decision was released were pretty big days on the website. And like I said before, the newsletter open rates were really good this month because we had big news. The December Twitter analytics look a little bit slow because we're still kind of waiting for a decision. I will tell you that in January, we've been tweeting a lot more. We tweeted, I'll actually just show you so you can see it. We've got Jason Benson and then the governor speaking. And this is one of the governor's slides here. And this is former Mayor Bruce Furness speaking in Bismarck. So we've been a lot more active than we have even over this past summer, just because we've got more to report on. So, yeah, so that's good. And then I can show you the new website again just to refresh your memory. See if it comes up. And we're still tweaking some of these things, but the status page here is where we're going to include the land and property status. And so that'll take you to this area, and each one of these will have its own section. So that's kind of the direction that we're going to make sure that people know can quickly get to what they're doing with that. So, yeah.
All right, thanks, Amy. Number 11, finalize the Diversion Authority meeting calendar.
And I think we handed out the final meeting calendar last time. If you need a copy, let me know. So we did update it and added a second placeholder board meeting. And I can email that to everybody again so you have a PDF printable version. But all the meetings will be on the website too, so.
Okay.
I tried to use my mobile to do the auto calendar,
Yep.
and I couldn't get it to work.
Okay,
But I'll deal with you separately.
that sounds good.
And the 3 questions video, Del Rey Williams.
Do you want to watch that one? It's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
We got time.
We got to be here till 3 anyway.
Yeah.
To our community is, if there was another solution that was much cheaper, we would go for it in a heartbeat. In fact, Fargo would really go for it in a heartbeat because it is going to cost Fargo and Cass County quite a bit to do that. Moorhead itself, by the way it's working out, doesn't pay for anything, but they're in-town stuff. So we're not part of that. We've agreed that we will go full steam in getting some funding from Minnesota, and we will do that. But even then, it's not a big portion of it. It really is Fargo and Cass County, and it is extremely important. We're not to that level. We weren't in 2009. I mean, I think 2009 was an eye-opener for Moorhead in particular because it hadn't gone that high in those times, and we're usually just ramping up on how we can help our neighbors, right? But that year, we were not prepared. I think the city did a really excellent job, and then frankly, I often talk about how Mark Voxlin and the council at that time right away started working on how can we fix this for our city. And so in partnership with the state of Minnesota, we started planning and building levees. But those levees won't be adequate if the diversion is not there. We would have to totally redo what we've already done if it's not there, just to get the 100-year protection. And even after taking 251 houses out, there's over 1,000 homes that would be under the 100-year protection, so they would go back on FEMA. What the diversion does when it's completed with what we're doing, it gives us 500-year protection. It'll give some assurances that we're protected. Interestingly enough, people do forget fast. We did a little research piece because people were talking about valuation of homes that are in the floodplain and those that are not. And truth be told, they sell at the same rate. And that just shows that people forget. But it'll be back faster. It'll be back in our time frame that we're living here. And I don't want to look back at that and think we could have done better. For Moorhead, it gives us stability. You hate to do all the work you're doing to grow your city, and as Moorhead, particularly as we grow our downtown, and then to have it wiped out. And anything of the bigger ones that may come through, that's potential loss of life. When you look back at 2009, we talk about how excited we were and we did it and stuff. The real truth is we took some big risks with people. And it turned out well, but a second time might not.
Thanks, Tammy.
So a little, if I can just add a little bit of tidbit of information regarding one of those things that Del Rey talked about, and that was the, if this diversion project isn't done, that 1,000 properties will be brought back into the floodplain. That includes many of the homes that is newly annexed that was Oakport Township. that the current flood project that was done there now meets the floodplain standard. And the state of Minnesota and DNR invested over $30 million into that project. And to have that now potentially fall back in as not being certifiable would be a huge, huge mistake. So I think the people on the Minnesota side really need to understand that this concept out there that Moorhead is protected. It is not. It is not protected, and it's not protected to the level that it needs to be. So I just wanted to throw it out there. So, that Oakport project, that was funded by Minnesota DNR to the tune of, it was over $30 million when you look at all the buyouts they did and the levees that were constructed. And to now have that potentially lose its certification, and which was the original goal and intent, not only to protect the properties, but to get it out of the floodplain. It's a little reminder to everybody that the dollars that have been spent on flood protection already could just go by the wayside if this isn't done.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? Anything else we should be doing? Any other group that we're missing? Whether it's a town or a group of people or landowners, is there anything else that people have brought to us, or?
This is Rocky. Maybe one thing that we've had some conversations about, it kind of goes along the lines of what Kevin was talking about with Becker County and Otter Tail County, but the city of Wolverton is something we've been unsuccessful in reaching out to in the past, and been doing some work to figure out who the right person is to contact there. They filed for a contested case hearing, but if you'll recall, we did an awful lot of outreach for Plan B, and we tried to get out to Wolverton, and working with one of their council members, they had actually asked for a meeting, and then we had it all set on the calendar ready to go, and he called up and canceled the meeting on advice from their lawyer. This was, a year ago or more. And so now that they've sort of re-engaged again, and there are some impacts in Wolverton, we've talked about trying to get down to Wolverton, but we haven't been very successful at it yet. So, but I think that's the same line that Kevin's talking about, talking to the other counties. It's just as important.
What about Comstock? What's their issue?
We went to Comstock for Plan B, and we kind of told them, they kind of got what they asked for. They're on the north side of the dam. They're dry. The project's a good ways away from them now. They're sort of no longer in the project area as far as our consideration is, really.
All right, anything else? Jake, you got anything on your mind?
Nope.
All right. If not, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.